Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight we're drifting far back into the dawn of humankind, to a time before history had even begun, the Stone Age. This was an age before metal, before writing, before cities. A world where fire was both weapon and comfort, and where stone held the secret to staying alive. Families sheltered together beneath hide and bone. Hunters shaped blades from flint and obsidian. And small bands laid the first foundations of culture and thought. And yet even then, people reached past mere survival. They carved figures from ivory, threaded beads from shells, and made music with flutes carved from bird bone. In those small gestures, imagination first took root. The Stone Age gave us our earliest art, our earliest rituals, and even our earliest technology. It was our very first glimpse of what it means to be human. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like and subscribe, or simply leave a thought in the comments below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest. Get comfortable, and let the weight of the day melt away as we begin our journey into the echoes and inventions of the Stone Age. Let's begin. The Stone Age was the longest chapter of human history. It spans a stretch of time so vast that nearly everything we call history sits at its very tail end. From the first crude tools chipped from rock to the rise of farming, this era reaches across millions of years. Civilizations, empires, kings, and written chronicles are the merest flicker beside its length. The Stone Age unfolds across three broad chapters. The Paleolithic, when people lived by hunting and gathering. The Mesolithic, when groups adjusted to a changing climate after the Ice Age. And the Neolithic, when farming and lasting villages first appeared. For generation after generation, for tens of thousands of lifetimes, humanity's whole world was stone, wood, fire, and bone. To step into the Stone Age is to see how small our written past truly is, and how deeply our beginnings are rooted in a time when even the humblest invention could change everything. Early humans built tools from far more than stone. The name Stone Age suggests people leaned on rock alone, but staying alive called for much more inventiveness. People carved bone into awls and needles, shaped antler into sturdy picks, and cut wood into shafts for spears and digging sticks. Plant fibers were twisted and braided into cord and rope. Sinew from animals lashed stone blades to wooden handles, while resins and tars worked as natural glue. Even bark, shells, and reeds were put to use. Together, these materials formed a toolkit far richer than the name Stone Age implies. A single spear might carry the effort of a dozen skills. Knapping stone, hardening wood in fire, carving, binding, and glue making. Each invention built upon the last, showing that early humans were not merely surviving, but engineering. Their resourcefulness laid the groundwork for everything that followed, proving that cleverness, not just raw strength, was humanity's truest tool. The earliest hand axes were remarkably symmetrical. Among the oldest known tools are Acheulean hand axes, appearing nearly 2 million years ago. These stone tools stand out not only for what they do, but for their beauty. Many were shaped into near-perfect teardrops or ovals, their edges flaked with such care that they looked deliberate, almost artistic. These hand axes served many purposes: butchering meat, scraping hides, cutting plants. But their symmetry hints at something deeper. Making one demanded foresight. The maker had to picture the finished shape and then patiently strike away flake after flake to reveal it. Some hand axes were made so large or so finely worked that they may never have been practical tools at all, but rather symbols of skill, standing, or identity. They show us that even in the deep past, humans cared about form as much as function. The Acheulean hand axe stands as one of humanity's first great achievements, both useful and beautiful. Shaping stone demanded an understanding of physics. Turning stone into sharp, dependable tools was never a matter of random blows. It required a real grasp of how stone breaks. Early toolmakers learned to strike at just the right angle, with just the right force, against carefully readied surfaces to control the result. This process, called knapping, relies on the natural geometry of conchoidal fracture, the same physics that makes glass shatter in smooth, curved patterns. By mastering it, ancient people could peel away long, razor-sharp flakes. A skilled knapper could pull dozens of blades from a single core of flint or obsidian. This knowledge was so specialized that archaeologists today can identify entire cultures by their tool-making style alone. To watch a knapper at work, even now, is to witness knowledge, rhythm, and focus in motion. It is one of the earliest sciences, an understanding of matter, force, and precision that turned rock into survival. Neanderthals invented composite tools. Neanderthals, so often painted as clumsy or unimaginative, were in truth skilled engineers of survival. They built composite tools, weapons and implements made by joining several materials into a single design. A sharpened stone point was carefully fitted into a wooden shaft, secured with animal sinew and an adhesive made from natural resin. This innovation turned simple stone into deadly hunting weapons, capable of piercing the thick hides of great Ice Age animals. Composite tools demanded planning, trial, and cooperation, since each part had to be crafted on its own before being brought together. Archaeologists have uncovered clear evidence of these constructions, including stone points still smeared with traces of resin. Far from simple or brutish, Neanderthals showed intelligence, adaptability, and technical skill. Their inventions shaped their world, and in many ways, mirrored the strategies of early modern humans. The composite tool was a quiet revolution, a mark of ingenuity born in the Ice Age. Ancient glue was made from tree resin and birch tar. One of the most surprising Stone Age inventions was glue. Long before any chemistry lab existed, people learned to harness sticky substances from the natural world. Tree resin could be warmed and softened, then used to fix stone blades onto wooden shafts. Birch tar was even more remarkable, making it required carefully heating bark in low oxygen conditions, a process not unlike modern distillation. This sticky black substance could bond tools with surprising strength and staying power. Producing birch tar was no accident. It called for knowledge of fire, materials, and timing. The ability to make adhesive on demand shows a level of experimentation and problem-solving that rivals modern invention. With glue, tools grew sturdier, weapons more dependable, and the range of what was possible widened. Something as simple as sticky black pitch reveals the remarkable ingenuity of ancestors who looked at trees not just for shelter or fuel, but for solutions to technical puzzles. People wove fibers thousands of years before farming began. Textiles may feel like a late invention, but people were twisting and weaving fibers long before the first fields of crops appeared. Archaeologists have found imprints of woven cloth pressed into clay fragments dating back more than 20,000 years, well before agriculture. Plant fibers, animal hair, and sinew were twisted into thread, then braided or woven into mats, bags, nets, and cords. This craft reshaped daily life. Nets opened new ways to fish and hunt. Woven bags carried gathered plants and tools. Mats gave insulation inside shelters. Later, clothing spun from fiber added comfort and protection. Weaving demanded patience and dexterity, often handed down through generations as a skill as vital as tool making or tending fire. Long before cities and farms, people had already mastered the art of binding fiber together, a quiet innovation woven into the very fabric of human survival. Some of the earliest jewelry was made from eagle talons. Long before gold or silver ornaments, people adorned themselves with what nature offered. One striking example comes from eagle talons, carefully gathered, polished, and strung together as jewelry more than 40,000 years ago. Archaeologists have found sets of talons bearing wear marks that show they once formed necklaces or bracelets. These objects served no practical purpose. They were purely symbolic, worn for meaning, beauty, or status. The choice of eagle talons is telling. Eagles were mighty hunters of the sky, and wearing their claws may have carried their strength, prestige, or spirit. These early ornaments show that even in the harsh landscapes of the Ice Age, people expressed identity, belief, and creativity. Jewelry made from eagle talons stands among the earliest known signs that humans sought not just to survive, but to show who they were. The oldest known art comes from cave walls. Some of the oldest surviving artworks on Earth lie hidden deep within caves. Tens of thousands of years ago, people painted vivid images of animals: mammoths, bison, horses, lions, in places like Chauvet and Lascaux in France, and Altamira in Spain. These paintings were made with natural pigments such as red ochre and black charcoal, applied with brushes of animal hair or blown onto the walls through hollow bones. The detail is astonishing. Horses gallop with arched necks. Bison lower their horns in challenge. Lions stalk in silence. These caves were more than shelter. They became vast canvases where imagination left its mark. Some images may have belonged to rituals. Others were teaching tools, and some were simply expressions of beauty. Whatever their purpose, they endure as windows into a world where art already sat at the center of human life. Proof that creativity reaches back to the very roots of our species. Humans carved portable art from bone and ivory. Not all Stone Age art was painted onto cave walls. People also carved portable objects, some small enough to fit in one hand. Figurines made from mammoth ivory, antler, or bone show humans, animals, and abstract shapes. Among the most famous are the so-called Venus figurines, small statues of women with exaggerated features, found across Europe and dating back tens of thousands of years. Their meaning is still debated. Were they fertility symbols, teaching aids, or simply works of expression? Other carvings depict animals in astonishing detail, from crouching lions to running horses, their forms captured with a sculptor's eye. These objects could travel from camp to camp, moving across the land as people moved. Portable art shows that creativity was never tied to one place. It was woven into daily life, part of the fabric of movement and memory. In these small carvings, we glimpse humankind's first sculptures. Early flutes were carved from bird bones. Music is among the oldest languages we share. and it reaches back into the Stone Age. Archaeologists have found flutes carved from the hollow wing bones of birds, dating back more than 30,000 years. These flutes carry carefully placed finger holes, showing deliberate design and a real understanding of sound. When replicas are played, they produce clear, haunting notes that echo through caverns just as they once did. Some flutes were even carved from mammoth tusks, split and hollowed with extraordinary care. These instruments show that Stone Age people were not only hunters and builders, but musicians too. Music may have accompanied rituals, storytelling, or simple pleasure around the fire. That people chose to build instruments so long ago shows that creativity and rhythm run as deeply human as tool-making or survival itself. Even in the harsh Ice Age, people filled the darkness with song. People painted with ochre long before written language existed. Ochre, a naturally occurring red pigment, is among humanity's oldest artistic materials. Archaeologists have traced its use back hundreds of thousands of years, well before the invention of writing or farming. People ground ochre into powder and mixed it with fat, water, or saliva to make paint. With it, they decorated cave walls, colored tools, and even rubbed pigment onto skin and hair. At burial sites, ochre was scattered over bodies, hinting at a symbolic or ritual role. The bright red may have stood for life, blood, or renewal. To use ochre was to carry meaning beyond mere survival, to add color and symbol into a world of stone and fire. Its presence across continents and cultures shows how deeply humans connected to color. Long before words could carry ideas, red ochre painted them, a pigment older than history itself, still speaking through its stains. Caves were marked with hand stencils across continents. One of the most striking and widespread images of Stone Age art is the hand stencil. To make one, a person pressed a hand against a cave wall and blew pigment around it, leaving a pale silhouette outlined in color. These stencils appear across Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas, spanning tens of thousands of years. Some caves hold hundreds of them, scattered over ceilings and walls, layered atop one another like a silent gathering of hands. Each stencil feels personal, the exact shape and size of a hand long vanished, yet still present. Some belong to adults, others to children. Their meaning stays uncertain, perhaps signatures, rituals, or simple marks of belonging. But whatever they meant, they carry real power. To stand in a cave surrounded by hand stencils is to be surrounded by a chorus of presence, a reminder that people reached out to leave themselves in stone. Ancient artists used lamps to light their work. Deep cave paintings could never have been made without light. To push back the darkness, Stone Age people crafted simple lamps from hollowed stone, filled them with fat, and lit a wick of moss or fiber. These lamps burned with a steady glow, casting warm light across the walls. In some caves, soot marks still linger on the ceilings, quiet evidence of fires carried inside. The flicker of flame gave motion to painted animals, making horses seem to gallop and bison shift in the shadows. These lamps were more than tools. They created atmosphere, turning pitch-black caverns into spaces alive with image, ritual, and story. Imagine the quiet, the smell of burning fat, the glow of flame, and the slow rhythm of a painter at work. These lamps remind us that even in darkness, humans sought ways to see, to create, and to leave something behind. Prehistoric sculptors shaped tiny stone figurines. Beyond paintings, Stone Age people carved small figurines from stone. Some were simple, shaped to sit easily in the hand, while others were detailed and precise. They portrayed animals, people, or abstract shapes, and have turned up across vast regions. These figurines were portable art, carried from place to place, often treasured enough to be buried with their owners. Some may have served as charms, others as teaching aids or ritual objects. A carved animal could stand for a spirit, a prayer for a successful hunt, or a memory of a powerful creature. The care and skill behind them shows that art was not mere decoration, but something woven into daily life and belief. These figurines remind us that people long ago looked at the world around them and felt the urge to hold it in their hands, to shape memory into stone. The famous Venus figures may have carried many meanings. The Venus figurines rank among the most mysterious artifacts of the Stone Age. These small carvings, often made from ivory, stone, or bone, depict women with exaggerated features, wide hips, full breasts, and rounded forms. They appear across Europe and parts of Asia, stretching back tens of thousands of years. Scholars have long argued over their meaning. Some suggest fertility symbols, celebrating motherhood and survival in hard times. Others think teaching tools, hunters' charms, or even self-portraits carved by women themselves. What is certain is that they carried weight far beyond simple decoration. Their repetition across regions suggests shared ideas and values. To hold one is to touch a belief that spanned generations, a belief in the power of the human form and the cycles of life and survival. They remain among the most iconic and puzzling creations of the Stone Age. Early hunters shaped spears from fire-hardened wood. Stone tools carried real power, but wood remained essential. Early hunters shaped long wooden shafts, sharpened their tips, and hardened them in fire. The process meant carefully charring the point and scraping it smooth, producing a tougher, sharper weapon. Such spears have turned up preserved in ancient bogs, some more than 400,000 years old. Their survival shows how vital woodworking was, even without stone points. With these spears, hunters brought down animals far larger than themselves, including horses and deer. Choosing the right wood, shaping it evenly, and hardening it just enough without burning through, called for real precision. Knowledge carried from one generation to the next. These fire-hardened spears remind us that long before the bow and arrow, long before metal, people already wielded carefully engineered weapons, simple shafts of wood sharpened by flame that gave them the power to endure. Stone tips made weapons deadlier and more reliable. Fixing a sharpened stone tip to a wooden spear revolutionized hunting. Stone tips pierced far more deeply than fire-hardened wood alone, making them deadly against large animals. They also added weight to the weapon, improving both accuracy and penetration. But this innovation was never only about function. It demanded careful craftsmanship. Hunters had to shape the stone into a symmetrical point, carve a shaft to match it, and bind the pieces together with sinew and resin. The result was a true composite weapon, joining the strengths of stone, wood, and fiber. Archaeological finds show stone tips stained with animal blood, frozen in time from ancient hunts. With these weapons, humans could bring down mammoths, bison, and deer with far greater success, feeding larger groups and pushing into new lands. The stone-tipped spear was more than a tool. It marked a leap forward in technology, shifting the balance between humans and prey. Fire itself was a technology that had to be mastered. It is easy to forget that fire, so central to human life, was once a rare and precious discovery. In the Stone Age, mastering fire meant far more than striking sparks. It called for the knowledge to find dry tinder, the patience to nurse embers, and the skill to keep flames alive through wind and rain. Archaeologists have found hearths dating back hundreds of thousands of years, layered with ash and burned bone, marking places where fire was carefully tended. Fire cooked food, making it safer and easier to digest. It hardened wood, lit the darkness, and kept predators at bay. But it also built community. People gathered around flame to share stories, warmth, and safety. To control fire was to control energy itself, humanity's first great invention, a technology born not from stone or wood, but from the very heart of nature. Hearths served as social and technological centers. A hearth was more than a fire pit. In the Stone Age, it stood as the center of life. Families gathered around it to cook, share food, talk, and work. Archaeological sites reveal circles of stone hearths ringed by tools, bones, and ornaments, a map of daily life arranged around flame. Hearths gave steady heat for drying meat, curing hides, and warming shelters. They offered light for tool-making and safety through the night. But they also became centers of memory, ashes from old fires mixed with new ones, marking years of use in the same place. Some hearths even seem to have been renewed symbolically, with fresh layers of stone or new arrangements. To sit beside a Stone Age hearth was to be part of something larger, the community, the tradition, and the flow of knowledge carried from one generation to the next in firelight. People cooked roots and grains long before farming. Long before fields of wheat or barley, Stone Age people experimented with cooking wild plants. Archaeologists have found charred remains of roots, tubers, and grains in ancient hearths, some tens of thousands of years old. These finds show that people understood how to make otherwise tough or bitter foods edible. Cooking broke down fibers, released nutrients, and turned starchy plants into a more reliable source of energy. Wild barley and oats were sometimes ground into flour, mixed with water, and cooked on hot stones. Roots and tubers were roasted in embers, turning hard, starchy lumps into soft, nourishing food. This innovation widened diets far beyond meat and berries, letting people thrive in new environments. Cooking plants may sound simple, but it marks a profound step. The ability to transform the natural world into something more sustaining, an early hint of the farming revolution still to come. The first bread was baked long before agriculture began. Bread feels like a product of farming, but evidence suggests it was made long before crops were ever cultivated. Archaeologists studying a site in Jordan uncovered charred remains of flatbread dating back more than 14,000 years, thousands of years before the first domesticated cereals. This bread was made from wild grains gathered by hand, crushed into flour with stones, mixed with water, and baked on hot rock. The result was a simple flatbread, and the process shows real skill with ingredients, tools, and technique. Bread means more than food. It means planning, preparation, and patience. To make it, people had to gather large amounts of grain, grind it, and bake it in a shared space. This discovery pushes the roots of baking deep into the Stone Age, showing that people were already crafting complex foods long before agriculture made grain a staple. Bread began as a Stone Age invention. Ancient mortars and pestles came long before farming. Grinding tools are often linked to agriculture, but mortars and pestles appear long before the first crops. Stone mortars with smoothed, rounded interiors have been found dating back more than 30,000 years, used to crush wild seeds, nuts, and roots. Pestles shaped from hard stone show clear wear from repeated pounding and grinding. These tools turned tough plant foods into digestible meals, unlocking calories raw plants could never give. They also show foresight. Grinding took real time, and people chose to invest that effort into preparing food for storage or shared meals. Some of the oldest grinding stones are so carefully made that they lasted generations. Their presence in camps and caves shows that plant food played a far larger role in the Stone Age diet than once believed. The mortar and pestle stand as quiet but powerful inventions, laying the groundwork for farming long before any field appeared. People used fire to harden clay figurines. Clay was not only shaped after farming began, in fact, it was being molded and fired long before. Archaeologists have found small figurines, some more than 20,000 years old, made of clay hardened by fire. These were often animals, carefully shaped and then placed into hearths or pits where flame baked them into permanence. Some figurines were deliberately broken, perhaps as ritual or symbol. Others survived, lasting tens of thousands of years. To harden clay was to discover a process that would later transform storage, cooking, and building. But even in its earliest use, it revealed imagination, the wish to create figures not from stone or bone, but from earth itself, transformed by fire. These tiny sculptures remind us that experimentation has always been part of human life, and that even deep in the Ice Age, people were already shaping Earth with flame. Stone Age people shaped the land with fire. Fire served for more than warmth and cooking. It was also used to reshape whole environments. Evidence shows that Stone Age groups practiced controlled burning of grassland and forest to drive animals, spur fresh plant growth, and clear paths. This practice, sometimes called fire stick farming in later traditions, created mosaics of habitat that drew game and made gathering easier. Layers of charcoal in soils across continents reveal that people were reshaping landscapes with flame tens of thousands of years ago. By burning vegetation with intent, they increased yields of berries, tubers, and grazing animals. Fire was humanity's first tool for managing an ecosystem, long before agriculture. It shows that people were never passive inhabitants of their world, but active shapers of it. The flicker of a torch in the Stone Age was not only about survival, it marked the beginning of humanity's long role as a force reshaping the earth. Dogs may have been the first animal ever tamed. Long before cattle, sheep, or horses were tamed, people formed a partnership with wolves that became the dog. Archaeological sites show evidence of domesticated dogs as early as 30,000 years ago, their remains buried beside humans. This bond transformed hunting, protection, and companionship. Dogs could track prey, guard camps, and offer warmth on cold nights. In return, humans gave food, care, and shelter. Over generations, the friendlier, calmer, more cooperative wolves became dogs, slowly forming a new species bound to us by need and trust. This domestication was never only practical, it was emotional too. Burials show dogs laid carefully beside their owners, sometimes adorned with beads. The bond between humans and dogs began in the Stone Age and continues unbroken today, the first great partnership between species, one that reshaped survival, culture, and the very idea of companionship. Wolf-dog partnerships changed hunting forever. Domesticating dogs left a profound mark on how humans hunted. With their speed, stamina, and keen sense of smell, dogs became unmatched partners in tracking prey. They could sense animals long before humans could, follow trails invisible to us, and help drive game into traps or ambushes. This partnership lifted hunting success dramatically, offering more reliable food supplies. Dogs also stood guard, warning groups of predators or intruders. Their presence may even have shaped human migration, making it possible to settle in harsher lands with greater safety. Archaeological finds show dog remains buried with care, a sign of how much they were valued in daily life. The wolf-dog partnership was more than convenience. It was a revolution in how survival itself was strategized. By working together, two species forged a bond that would echo across millennia, changing the course of both their histories forever. Early communities painted their bodies with pigment. Art was never confined to caves and tools. It was also carried on the body. Pigments like red ochre were used for body painting tens of thousands of years ago. People smeared designs onto skin, hair, and even clothing, creating patterns that may have marked identity, status, or ritual. Some burials show bones stained with pigment, suggesting decorated skin was part of daily or ceremonial life. Body painting may have served ceremonies, hunting rites, or group identity, much like tattoos or uniforms do today. In harsh climates, pigment may also have offered practical protection against sun or insects. The act of painting the body shows people already grasped the power of appearance, how color and symbol could turn a person into something more. In the Stone Age, art was not confined to walls. It lived and breathed on the human form itself. Beads made from shells were worn as marks of identity. One of the most enduring forms of Stone Age ornament is the bead. People drilled tiny holes into shells, bone, and stone, threading them onto cord to make necklaces, bracelets, and decoration. Some of these beads are more than 100,000 years old, among the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior. Beads were never mere decoration. They carried meaning, signifying membership in a group, an achievement, or a role within a community. Some beads came from shells gathered far from the settlement, hinting at long-distance trade or journeys. The effort to shape, polish, and string these ornaments shows that beauty and symbolism mattered as much as survival. Each bead was both personal and social, a small piece of identity worn close to the skin. In the quiet world of the Stone Age, beads spoke silently of who people were and how they wished to be seen. People traveled great distances to trade exotic stone. Trade networks stretched across surprising distances in the Stone Age. Archaeologists have found obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharpness, carried hundreds of miles from its source. Other exotic stones, shells, and pigments traveled across mountain, river, and plain, passed from hand to hand through complex networks. These objects were valuable as well as useful, marking bonds between groups. Trade was more than exchange. It was a way of building relationships, sharing knowledge, and strengthening survival. A community with access to rare materials could make sturdier tools or display status through ornament. That long-distance trade existed so early shows that people were never isolated bands, but part of wider webs of interaction. Even without wheels, writing, or metal, They carried goods across the land, linking distant groups together. These journeys reveal a human hunger to connect, exchange, and widen horizons. Even in prehistory, obsidian traveled hundreds of miles through ancient networks. Obsidian, the glossy black volcanic glass, was among the most prized materials of the Stone Age. Its edge could be sharper than modern surgical steel, making it ideal for blades and arrowheads. But obsidian sources were limited, found only in certain volcanic regions. Archaeologists have found obsidian tools hundreds of miles from their origin, proof that people carried or traded them across vast distances. In some cases, tools made from the obsidian of a single mountain have turned up scattered across whole regions, showing the reach of early networks. To hold such a blade was to hold not just a tool, but a piece of a faraway place. Each shard linked communities separated by river, mountain, and plain. This long-distance exchange shows that Stone Age people were never isolated wanderers, but part of sprawling connections, carrying rare treasures by hand, step by step across the ancient world. Amber was gathered and traded long before cities existed. Amber, fossilized tree resin with its warm golden glow, captivated people long before towns or markets ever rose. In the Stone Age, amber beads were gathered from coastal regions where it washed ashore, often far from where people lived. Some of the earliest ornaments found are strings of amber beads, shaped and polished with care. Their beauty served no practical purpose. They were worn for meaning, status, or perhaps spiritual belief. Archaeologists have found amber far from any natural source, proof that it traveled long distances through trade. For early people, amber may have meant more than decoration. Some pieces held trapped insects or leaves, tiny time capsules that must have seemed magical. The shimmering glow of amber, born of ancient forests and hardened into stone, was among the first precious materials people sought and carried. A symbol of beauty in a hard world, humans carved intricate patterns into ostrich eggshells. Among the most delicate Stone Age artifacts are decorated ostrich eggshells. In Africa, people carved intricate geometric patterns into the shells tens of thousands of years ago. These fragments, some still whole, show carefully cut lines, cross-hatching, and spirals. Ostrich eggs served as more than containers for food or water. Their shells became canvases. Some were used as water flasks, carried across dry land, sealed at the top with plugs of grass. Decorating them may have marked ownership, identity, or ritual meaning. The designs suggest a symbolic language long before writing, a way of communicating or preserving tradition through pattern. Carving on eggshell demanded precision. Too much pressure and the fragile surface would shatter. These artifacts show that even the most practical objects could be transformed into art, and that creativity was already woven into daily survival, carried in the palm of a hand. People used red ochre in burials around the world. Red ochre appears again and again in Stone Age burials. Bodies were sprinkled or painted with the pigment before being laid to rest, turning the soil around them a deep crimson. This practice appears across continents, from Europe to Africa to Asia, stretching back tens of thousands of years. Its meaning remains unknown, but its consistency suggests deep significance. Red may have stood for life, blood, or renewal. Perhaps it marked a return to the earth, or a way of guiding the dead into another realm. In some burials, ochre was used so heavily that bones remain stained red even now. Its presence shows that people never treated death as a simple ending, but as a passage requiring care, ritual, and symbol. The use of red ochre is among the earliest evidence of belief, proof that humans carried meaning into the grave, as surely as they carried tools. Some graves hold beads, tools, and animal remains. Stone Age graves often hold more than bone. Archaeologists have found burials where the dead were accompanied by necklaces, beads, tools, and even animal remains. A child's grave might hold strings of beads, while an adult's burial could contain a carefully made weapon or a decorated bone. In some cases, the bones of animals, antlers, tusks, or even whole skulls were placed beside the human dead, suggesting symbolic ties between people and the creatures they depended on. These objects were never random. They were chosen, prepared, and placed with intent. Such offerings show that people valued memory, identity, and perhaps even hope for an afterlife. To bury tools and ornaments with the dead was to give them meaning beyond daily use. It shows that life in the Stone Age was never only practical survival, but emotional, symbolic, and deeply human in its care for the departed. Ancient burials reveal care for the dead. In many Stone Age burials, the way bodies were positioned shows death was never treated carelessly. Some were laid in curled, fetal-like poses, as if returning to the position of birth. Others were arranged with care, arms folded or heads propped on stone. Graves were sometimes lined with stone slabs or dug into special pits. Burial itself took real effort, especially in frozen or rocky ground, and suggests real respect for the dead. Some graves show signs of repeated visits, disturbed layers of soil, added pigment or ornaments, hinting that the living returned to honor those who had passed. These practices show that memory and ritual were already part of life tens of thousands of years ago. Caring for the dead marks a profound threshold. It shows that people felt the weight of loss and sought to hold on to meaning beyond death. The first known cemeteries date back tens of thousands of years. Not all burials stood alone. Some were grouped together in what may be the earliest cemeteries. Sites like Sungir in Russia and Kafsa in Israel hold multiple burials close together, sometimes with elaborate grave goods and pigment. These groupings suggest certain places were chosen again and again for burial, creating spaces of memory and community. A cemetery is more than a practical solution. It is a statement of belonging, that the dead remain tied to the land and to one another. In some cases, children and adults were buried side by side, reflecting family ties. Others show signs of ritual, with shared objects placed among several graves. That cemeteries existed so early in history shows people were already thinking collectively about death, identity, and place. They built not just shelters for the living, but sacred ground for the dead, binding community across generations. Some Stone Age skulls show signs of trepanation. One of the most astonishing finds in Stone Age archaeology is trepanation, the deliberate drilling or scraping of holes into the human skull. Skulls dating back thousands of years show clear evidence of the practice, with smoothed edges that show healing. This means many people survived the procedure. The reasons remain debated. It may have treated head injuries, relieved pressure, or served as a spiritual or ritual act. Performing trepanation demanded skill, patience, and a real knowledge of anatomy, since mistakes could easily prove fatal. That patients survived shows these early surgeons had remarkable control. Some skulls even show several trepanations, suggesting repeated treatment. Trepanation is among the earliest forms of surgery in human history, proof that Stone Age people were not only skilled hunters and artists, but experimental healers willing to push the edges of their craft. People survived brain surgery long before writing existed. The survival of trepanation patients is written clearly in the bone itself. Around the holes cut into skulls, new bone growth forms, a sign of healing over weeks, months, or even years. This proves the surgeries were not always fatal, and that communities cared for people through their recovery. Imagine the challenge. No antiseptics, no anesthesia, only stone tools and firelight. Yet somehow people survived. Some patients even lived long enough to undergo the procedure more than once. This survival suggests Stone Age groups held not only the technical skill for surgery, but also the social structure to nurse patients back to health. It reflects empathy, patience, and care, qualities as vital as stone blades or fire. These ancient survivors of brain surgery stand as remarkable proof that humanity's pursuit of healing and resilience stretches deep into prehistory, long before writing ever recorded it. Shell middens reveal ancient diets and settlements. Shell middens, huge heaps of discarded shells, are among the most telling archaeological sites of the Stone Age. Found along coasts and rivers, these mounds of oyster, clam, and mussel shell often rise several meters high and stretch for hundreds of meters. They are the remains of countless meals, built up over centuries. Within them, archaeologists find tools, bones, and traces of daily life, showing these were never mere garbage heaps, but long-term settlements. Their layers preserve a record of diet, climate, and environment, offering insight into how people adapted to life on the coast. Shell middens show seafood was never occasional, but central to survival for many groups. They also reveal planning, since gathering shellfish was often seasonal and communal. These great mounds stand as silent monuments to meals shared and lives lived, showing how the rhythm of the tides shaped human communities thousands of years ago. People ate fish and shellfish far earlier than once believed. For years, archaeologists assumed Stone Age diets centered mostly on big game like mammoths and bison. But finds of fish bone, shell middens, and fishing tools tell a very different story. People were eating fish and shellfish far earlier than once thought, stretching back tens of thousands of years. This included not only small coastal shellfish, but freshwater fish caught with hooks, spears, and nets. Fish gave protein and nutrients that supported brain growth, perhaps shaping the rise of human intelligence. Shellfish, easy to gather and plentiful, offered reliable food even when hunting failed. Some sites suggest large feasts of shellfish, with thousands of shells discarded in a single layer. Turning to river, lake, and coast shows adaptability and ingenuity. The Stone Age was never only the age of mammoth hunters. It was also the age of fishers and gatherers, tied to water as much as land. Early hunters brought down mammoths with strategy and tools. Mammoths were among the largest and most dangerous animals humans ever hunted. Bringing one down took more than strength. It took strategy, cooperation, and technology. Evidence shows hunters used coordinated drives, herding mammoths into bog, ravine, or trap, where they could be overwhelmed. Spears tipped with stone points were hurled in groups, piercing thick hide. At times, fire and noise drove herds into vulnerable positions. The remains of mammoths, surrounded by clusters of stone tools, show the aftermath of such hunts. Huge undertakings that could feed entire communities for weeks. Every part of the animal was used: meat for food, hide for shelter, bone and tusk for tools and building material. Hunting mammoths was dangerous, but success meant survival. These hunts reveal the ingenuity and courage of Stone Age people, whose cooperation let them face giants of the Ice Age. Cave lions were among the fiercest predators humans faced. Alongside mammoths and bison, Stone Age people lived beside cave lions, one of the largest big cats ever to exist. These lions grew larger than modern African lions, with males possibly lacking manes, giving them a sleek, striking look. Cave lions hunted the same prey as humans, creating direct rivalry. Cave paintings show them in detail, sometimes in groups, suggesting people watched them closely. Archaeological evidence even hints at ritual ties, with lion bones arranged in deliberate patterns. Facing such predators demanded vigilance and courage. A lion could threaten a camp or steal prey before people could claim it. Yet these animals also inspired awe, becoming part of story, ritual, and art. To live in the Stone Age was to share the world with cave lions, powerful hunters whose presence shaped not only survival strategy, but imagination and respect for the wild. Woolly rhinoceroses roamed beside early people. Across the Stone Age, vast plains of Eurasia were home to woolly rhinoceroses, huge animals wrapped in thick fur with long, curved horns jutting from their snouts. These creatures grazed on grass and shrub, enduring Ice Age cold beneath their heavy coats. They were formidable and dangerous, and evidence suggests humans sometimes hunted them, though at great risk. Cave paintings show woolly rhinos in vivid detail, capturing their distinctive horns and massive bulk. That people chose to paint them shows the mark they left on human life. Their bones turn up alongside stone tools, suggesting encounters that ended in hunt or conflict. Like mammoths, they offered meat, hide, and material, but they also stood for danger. To walk the Stone Age step was to walk among giants, and the woolly rhinoceros was among the most awe-inspiring and feared of them all. Humans shared the Ice Age world with giant deer. Among the most striking animals of the Stone Age was the giant deer. Often called the Irish elk, though it ranged far beyond Ireland, these enormous creatures carried antlers spanning up to 12 feet across, among the largest deer ever to live. They grazed open plain and grassland, sharing the world with mammoth, rhino, and bison. For humans, giant deer meant both food and a source of awe. Cave art depicts them with real care for their immense antlers. Hunting them must have been hard, since their size and speed made them formidable, but their meat and hide were invaluable. The image of a human hunter standing beneath the towering antlers of a giant deer captures the scale of life in the Ice Age, a world where people lived among animals that seemed almost mythic in size and presence. Ancient humans painted animals they hunted and feared. Cave art shows not only animals admired from afar, but also those hunted for survival or feared as predators. Bison, mammoths, horses, and deer dominate many paintings, often drawn with remarkable accuracy. Lions, rhinos, and bears appear too, animals that posed threats as well as inspiration. These images may have belonged to rituals meant to ensure success in the hunt, or to show respect for powerful creatures. Some paintings show animals wounded by spears, suggesting teaching or symbolic intent. Others show herds in motion, capturing the rhythm of life on the plains. These paintings remind us that Stone Age people lived in constant relationship with the animals around them, dependent on some, threatened by others, inspired by all. The art was never mere decoration, but an expression of connection, awe, and understanding, a dialogue in pigment between humans and the wild world they shared. Some cave art depicts animals now extinct. Among the most haunting details of Stone Age art is the presence of animals that no longer exist. Cave walls show woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave lions, and giant deer, creatures long vanished from the earth. These images are more than art. They are records of lost worlds, snapshots of ecosystems that disappeared thousands of years ago. For archaeologists, they offer rare glimpses into species otherwise known only from bone. For us, they are windows into the imagination of people who lived beside these animals, watched their movement, and chose to capture them in pigment. To stand before a painting of an extinct creature is to feel time collapse. Both artist and animal are gone, but their meeting endures on stone. These depictions remind us that art can hold memory across ages, carrying the presence of the vanished into the present. People invented fishing hooks from bone. Fishing became a vital part of Stone Age life, and one of its most ingenious inventions was the fish hook. Carved from bone, antler, or shell, these hooks show real craftsmanship, with barbs carefully shaped to catch and hold. Some are more than 20,000 years old, proof that fishing technology was well developed long before farming. With hooks, people could catch fish in river, lake, and sea, widening their diet and securing food. Hooks also show planning, since making them required skill, patience, and an understanding of fish behavior. Their presence alongside weights and net fragments suggests entire fishing systems, not chance catches alone. Fishing reshaped survival, opening new sources of nutrition that could support larger groups. The humble bone hook reminds us that small inventions can shift the course of history, feeding both mind and body across the long march of human development. Nets and baskets were woven in the Mesolithic. During the Mesolithic, the middle phase of the Stone Age, people developed new ways of weaving plant fiber into nets and baskets. Impressions pressed into clay fragments reveal woven patterns dating back thousands of years. Nets made fishing and small game hunting more efficient, while baskets transformed gathering, letting people carry larger loads of food and material. These woven objects rarely survive, but the traces they left show how much fiber technology mattered. Making nets and baskets called for patience and skill, along with knowledge of local plants. It also marked a shift toward new survival strategies, leaning more on stored food and organized group work. Nets and baskets may seem humble beside stone tools or cave art, but they reveal ingenuity, just as profound, quiet revolutions that shaped the daily lives of Stone Age communities. Ancient rafts and canoes carried people across water. The Stone Age was never confined to land. Evidence shows people built simple rafts and dugout canoes, letting them cross river, lake, and even stretches of sea. Some of the oldest watercraft found are dugouts carved from single tree trunks, shaped and hollowed with fire and stone tools. These vessels carried people and goods, enabling fishing, trade, and exploration. Reaching islands took planning, cooperation, and navigation skill, proof that Stone Age groups were far from primitive wanderers. They were seafarers, willing to risk open water to find new land. The spread of humans to Australia more than 40,000 years ago could only have happened with boats, making these early craft among the most important technologies in history. Each raft or canoe was more than wood and effort. It was a bridge to new worlds, widening the horizons of humanity one crossing at a time. Stone Age people reached remote islands. The Stone Age was never confined to the safety of the mainland. Archaeological evidence shows people reaching remote islands tens of thousands of years ago, well before sails or metal tools existed. Reaching these islands took planning, skill, and courage. Stone Age people would have built rafts or dugout canoes, loaded them with food, fire, and tools, and pushed off into the unknown. Once there, they adapted quickly to unfamiliar surroundings, hunting new animals, gathering shellfish, and shaping tools from whatever local stone was on hand. Some of these journeys were short crossings, but others stretched across open water demanding real navigation skill. These voyages show exploration was never a later invention of kings and empires. It already lived in the Stone Age. Even then, humans were drawn to new horizons, carried forward by ingenuity and the courage to cross the sea. Early mariners crossed to Australia over open water. One of the great feats of Stone Age seafaring was the settling of Australia. More than 40,000 years ago, people crossed open sea to reach this vast continent, bringing tools, fire, and knowledge with them. Australia was never joined to Asia by land, meaning these journeys demanded real watercraft and navigation. Groups may have built sturdy rafts or canoes from wood and plant fiber, lashed together with cord. They would have needed to plan supplies, track currents, and perhaps even read the stars. Once they arrived, they adapted to entirely new landscapes filled with giant kangaroos, wombats, and enormous flightless birds. This migration shows that even deep in the Stone Age, humans were never bound by geography. They were explorers, capable of crossing seas and turning new lands into home. The crossing to Australia stands as one of the earliest and boldest chapters in humanity's journey. The first settlement of the Americas happened in the Stone Age. The Americas were the last great continent settled by humans during the Stone Age. Evidence suggests people crossed from Siberia into Alaska more than 15,000 years ago, when lower sea levels exposed the Bering Land Bridge. Even this land bridge demanded extraordinary endurance, vast icy plains stretching hundreds of miles, home to mammoth, bison, and wolf. Other theories propose some groups hugged the Pacific coast in boats, following shorelines rich with fish and shellfish. However they came, the first Americans carried Stone Age tools, fire, and tradition into a new world. They spread rapidly from Arctic tundra to tropical forest, adapting with astonishing speed. Within a few thousand years, humans lived from the tip of South America to the frozen north. The settling of the Americas was a Stone Age epic, a story of migration, adaptation, and relentless human curiosity. Humans adapted to Arctic environments with fur and tools. The Ice Age forced humans into some of the harshest conditions imaginable. In the frozen Arctic, survival hinged on ingenuity. People hunted reindeer, mammoth, and seal, animals that gave both food and vital material. Skins were scraped, softened, and sewn into warm clothing, layered against bitter wind. Bone and antler were carved into needle, awl, and spear point, while snow and ice themselves became building material for temporary shelter. Fires burned in carefully guarded hearths, fueled by bone and fat when wood ran scarce. Hunting strategy had to account for migrating animals, calling for seasonal camps and constant movement. Archaeological sites show humans not only surviving in Arctic conditions, but thriving, building cultures deeply tied to ice and snow. These adaptations prove that even without metal or wheels, humans held extraordinary resilience. The Arctic was never a barrier. It was a challenge people overcame with ingenuity. Sewing needles made of bone are among the oldest tools known. Among the most remarkable Stone Age inventions are sewing needles carved from bone. Some date back more than 30,000 years and are astonishingly delicate, with tiny eyes drilled through their tips. These needles transformed survival, letting people stitch hides together into fitted clothing. With them, humans could fashion coats, leggings, boots, and even gloves, creating insulation far beyond what loose hide alone could offer. Sewing meant people could endure colder climates, push into harsher land, and stay warm while traveling. The skill of making needles also shows dexterity and precision, since carving bone into such fine tools took patience and steady hands. Many needles are so perfectly shaped that they rival modern ones. They remind us that innovation does not always arrive in grand leaps. Sometimes it is a small, humble tool, no bigger than a finger, that opens entire new worlds of possibility. Clothing transformed survival in harsh climates. Before tailored clothing, people relied on draped hides for warmth. But with sewing, Stone Age communities could shape garments fitted to the human body, allowing movement and far greater insulation. Clothing became one of the most transformative technologies of the age. It turned icy plains into livable land and enabled migration into Arctic regions where an unprotected human could not survive. Clothing also became a canvas for identity, decorated with bead, fringe, or pigment to show status or belonging. Some burials show individuals dressed in stitched garments, covered with ornament, proof that clothing carried symbolic meaning alongside practical value. The ability to dress for survival mattered as much as fire or tools. With stitched clothing, people wrapped themselves not only in hide, but in ingenuity, proof that adaptation was as much about invention as endurance. Footprints preserved in mud reveal family journeys. In some places, Stone Age people left behind traces more intimate than tool or bone. Footprints preserved in mud, ash, or clay. These fossilized tracks capture moments in time tens of thousands of years old. One site in Tanzania shows a group walking together across wet ground, adults and children side by side. In New Mexico, a long trail of prints reveals individuals carrying loads, pausing, and moving on. A frozen record of a journey. These tracks are astonishing because they are not artifacts, but direct evidence of movement, preserved like photographs in stone. They show gait, speed, even pauses and stumbles. Some prints are so detailed you can see the toes, arches, and slips in the mud. These footprints remind us that the Stone Age held not only tools and art, but real people moving through landscapes, families, children, and groups leaving their mark step by step. Some tracks show children playing beside adults. Footprints often reveal more than a simple journey. At some sites, children's tracks show signs of play. Small feet darting back and forth, circling or overlapping adult paths. At one famous site in France, Children's prints alongside torch marks suggest they explored caves together, running, pausing, perhaps even laughing in the dark. These tracks capture joy, curiosity, and the daily rhythm of family life in the Stone Age. They remind us that children belong to every community, learning and exploring alongside adults. Archaeological sites brim with tools and weapons, but footprints tell a different story, that people laughed, played, and lived as families, just as we do today. Such fleeting evidence rarely survives, but when it does, it bridges the gulf of time. Across tens of thousands of years, children's playful steps still ripple with life, reminding us of the humanity we all share. People left handprints in caves for millennia. Beyond paintings of animals, caves around the world are marked by human hands. People pressed their palms against stone walls and blew pigment around them, leaving negative handprints behind. These images appear from Europe to Asia, Africa to the Americas, spanning tens of thousands of years. Some caves hold hundreds of them, clustered like silent gatherings. Each hand is unique, personal, and enduring, the shape of an individual who lived long ago. Some belong to adults, others to children, and some may even have been repeated as ritual across generations. Their purpose stays a mystery. Were they signatures, rites of passage, or spiritual symbols? Whatever their meaning, they are hauntingly direct. To stand before them is to meet the outline of another human being, unchanged by time, a hand still reaching out across millennia, preserved in stone and pigment. Ancient footprints in Britain are nearly 1,000,000 years old. On the coast of Britain, shifting tides once revealed a discovery almost beyond belief. Human footprints nearly 1,000,000 years old. Preserved in ancient mud, these tracks belong to a small group, men, women, and children, walking along a river estuary. The impressions were fragile, lasting only days once exposed, but they were documented before the sea erased them again. These prints predate modern humans, likely belonging to an earlier hominin species living in northern Europe during a warmer interglacial period. They stand among the oldest footprints ever found outside Africa. To picture a family walking across a mudflat nearly 1,000,000 years ago is to stretch time itself. These footprints are not artifacts made by tool or pigment, but direct evidence of life as immediate and personal as any step we take today, linking us to ancestors almost unimaginably distant. Stone Age campsites preserve hearths and post holes. Archaeological sites sometimes preserve entire Stone Age camps, complete with hearth, post hole, and scattered tools. These traces reveal how people arranged their lives. Hearths mark the center of daily activity, where meals were cooked and warmth shared. Post holes show where wooden supports once stood, holding up shelters of hide, bark, or bone. Around them, stone flake, animal bone, and ornament mark the remains of tasks, butchering, toolmaking, or weaving. Some camps were seasonal, set near rivers, during salmon runs, or along plains during game migrations. Others stood longer term, used year after year, building layers of ash and debris. Each site is like a snapshot of a community, frozen in soil and stone. These camps remind us that Stone Age life was never aimless wandering. It was organized, social, and patterned, centered on hearths and homes that anchored people in their landscapes. Temporary huts were built from mammoth bones. In the cold expanses of Ice Age Europe, some groups built remarkable shelters from mammoth bone. Circular huts of tusk skull, and massive bone were carefully arranged and covered with hide to keep out the wind. Some were decorated with carved bone or painted pigment, turning them into more than simple shelter. Inside, hearths glowed and families gathered, sheltered by the very animals they once hunted. These structures reveal both ingenuity and respect, since turning bone into architecture demanded planning and cooperation. Archaeologists have found entire villages of mammoth bone huts, showing people could build stable, lasting dwellings even in the harshest climates. To sit inside such a hut was to live surrounded by the memory of the hunt, sheltered by the remains of Ice Age giants. These bone houses stand among the most extraordinary examples of survival architecture in the ancient world. Some settlements used reindeer antlers as building frames. Not every Stone Age shelter was built from mammoth bone. In regions rich with reindeer, people gathered antlers and used them as building material. Antlers, light yet strong, could be lashed together into frames for huts, later covered with hide or bark. This use of antlers shows remarkable flexibility, adapting architecture to whatever animal and material the land offered. Archaeological evidence suggests these structures were both practical and symbolic. Reindeer stood central to survival, offering meat, hide, and tools, and now their antlers sheltered the living as well. This resourcefulness highlights the creativity of Stone Age people, who saw potential in every part of the animals they hunted. To build a home from antler was to turn the wilderness itself into a source of refuge, blending survival with ingenuity in ways that still astonish archaeologists today. People dug storage pits to keep food safe. Food security mattered in the Stone Age, just as it does now. To preserve supplies, people dug storage pits into the ground, sometimes lining them with stone, clay, or grass to keep moisture out. These pits could hold nuts, dried meat, or roots, protecting them from decay and animals. In colder climates, pits worked like natural refrigerators, keeping food frozen through winter. In warmer regions, some were sealed with clay or covered with flat stones to hold cool, dry conditions. Storage pits mark an important step toward stability, the ability to save food for lean times rather than living day to day. They also suggest planning and cooperation, since maintaining shared stores demanded trust within a community. These humble pits cut into earth reveal foresight and strategy, the quiet beginnings of a mindset that would one day lead to farming and permanent settlement. Early calendars were carved into bone and stone. Among the most fascinating Stone Age artifacts are bones and stones etched with sequences of notches. Some of these markings appear to track lunar cycles, suggesting they worked as early calendars dating back more than 20,000 years. These objects show people were paying close attention to time, not just the passing of days, but the patterns of moon and season. Such knowledge would have been invaluable, helping communities anticipate animal migration, plant growth, and shifts in weather. The ability to record and track cycles marks abstract thought, moving beyond immediate survival into long-term planning. These early calendars may have served as teaching tools, ritual objects, or simple memory aids, but they reveal a striking truth. Humans were already measuring the flow of time, tens of thousands of years before writing. Each notch carved into bone was a step toward calendars, clocks, and the very concept of history. Moon phases may have been tracked in ancient notches. Several Stone Age artifacts carry series of carefully cut notches that align with the phases of the moon. Some scholars believe these objects served as lunar calendars, capable of tracking the roughly 29-day cycle from new moon to full. Such tracking would have let people predict tide, migration pattern, or seasonal shift tied to the moon's rhythm. The markings may have served as shared records, knowledge passed among groups to guide hunting or ritual. This ability to link notches on bone to celestial cycles shows abstract thought and symbolic understanding, a leap from counting objects to measuring time itself. To hold one of these notched bones is to glimpse an early form of astronomy, a first step in humanity's long tradition of gazing upward and finding meaning in the sky. These artifacts prove that even in the Stone Age, people sought order in the heavens above. Stone Age people watched the stars for patterns. Even without written records, it is clear Stone Age people observed the night sky. Megalithic sites, rock carvings, and stone alignments suggest deliberate attention to celestial pattern. Stars and constellations may have marked seasons, guided journeys, or inspired story. Watching the heavens was practical as well as symbolic, a way of placing human life within a larger cosmos. Some caves feature dots and shapes that may represent constellations, the earliest attempts to map the stars. Tracking the movement of celestial bodies took patience and memory, watching across years and passing knowledge down through generations. This practice shows astronomy is no modern science, but an ancient human instinct. Stone Age people looked up, saw order in the sky, and began weaving it into their survival and their imagination. From these first observations grew the long history of human stargazing. Some megaliths may have been early observatories. Large stone monuments built in the later Stone Age suggest people were not only watching the skies, but marking them with architecture. Some megaliths, such as stone circles and alignments, appear to correspond with solstices or lunar events. At certain times of year, sunlight or moonlight passes directly through gaps between stones, lighting central points. Such alignments suggest intentional design, perhaps for tracking seasons, planning agriculture, or holding rituals tied to celestial cycles. Building such monuments took immense labor, cooperation, and foresight, far beyond the needs of daily survival. They reveal a community invested in time, order, and meaning. If these structures served as observatories, they stand among the first scientific instruments ever built, giant calendars of stone. To gather at a circle and watch the sunrise fall into perfect alignment would have been to witness not just a new day, but humanity's growing mastery of time. Göbekli Tepe was built long before cities existed. In modern-day Turkey stands one of the most astonishing discoveries in prehistory. Göbekli Tepe, built more than 11,000 years ago. This site predates agriculture, pottery, and cities. Yet it is monumental in scale. Massive stone pillars, some weighing tons, were arranged in circular enclosures carved with images of animals and abstract symbols. What is extraordinary is that hunter-gatherers, people without farms or permanent villages, built it. This challenges the long-held idea that agriculture had to come first, before monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that gathering for ritual and belief may have driven people to organize, build, and eventually settle. The site shows that imagination and cooperation could produce works of staggering complexity, even without metal or wheels. It stands among archaeology's greatest puzzles, a temple at the dawn of human history, reshaping everything we thought we knew about the Stone Age. Monumental pillars were carved with animal reliefs. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe, are not bare stone. They are covered in detailed relief carvings of animals: lions, snakes, vultures, wild boar, and fox. These images are vivid, sometimes stacked in layers, sometimes arranged in deliberate sequence. The carvings suggest stories, myths, or symbols now lost to us, but clearly important to the people who made them. Carving such figures into stone took immense effort, precision, and artistic vision. These were never simple decoration, but part of a symbolic system binding communities together. The reliefs show that Stone Age art was never confined to caves or figurines. It was monumental, public, and shared. Standing among the pillars, surrounded by carved animals, must have felt like stepping into a world where humans and creatures intertwined. These carvings remain among the oldest surviving monumental artworks on Earth, testimony to belief and imagination in the Stone Age. The first temples came before agriculture. When we picture temples, we often imagine them rising in cities built by farmers and kings. But astonishingly, the very first temples came before farming itself. At sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, hunter-gatherers built enormous ritual enclosures more than 11,000 years ago, long before the domestication of wheat or livestock. These structures, made of towering carved pillars, show that spiritual or communal gathering may have driven human organization. Instead of agriculture leading to temples, temples may have led to agriculture, with people gathering for ritual, staying longer, and gradually learning to tame plants and animals nearby. This flips the story of civilization on its head, showing imagination, ritual, and belief mattered just as much as survival needs in shaping history. The world's first temples remind us that community and meaning were as essential as food itself. People gathered for feasts at sacred sites. Archaeological evidence suggests Stone Age people did not just build sacred places, they traveled to them for feasts. Bones of wild animals, large cooking pits, and discarded tools have turned up around ritual sites like Göbekli Tepe, pointing to massive gatherings. People may have traveled miles with food, drink, and offerings, coming together to share in ritual and celebration. These feasts meant more than a meal. They were moments of bonding, exchange, and identity. Imagine the glow of fire pits, groups roasting meat, sharing stories, perhaps singing as carved animals loomed in the background. Such gatherings helped bind scattered groups into larger networks, forging alliances that might last across seasons. These early feasts show celebration is no modern invention. Even in the Stone Age, people found joy in gathering, eating, and marking special moments together, building community with fire, food, and song. The roots of storytelling reach back to the Stone Age. Storytelling is older than writing, older than cities, older even than farming. Around fires, Stone Age people must have shared tales of hunt, spirit, ancestor, and dream. Archaeologists cannot dig up spoken stories, but clues remain in cave painting, carving, and ritual artifact. A sequence of animal images, a handprint, or a carved figurine may have sparked explanations passed from one generation to the next. Stories taught children about danger and tradition and gave meaning to the world around them. They may have explained the stars, the animals, or the mysteries of death and birth. Storytelling bound groups together, preserving knowledge without any need for writing. To imagine the first tales is to picture flickering firelight, shadows moving on stone walls, and voices rising in rhythm. The Stone Age was the birthplace of story, a tradition that has carried human imagination through every age since. Cave art may have served as a teaching tool. The vivid animal paintings in caves like Lascaux or Chauvet may have been more than decoration or ritual. Some scholars believe they served as teaching tools. The way animals are drawn in motion, heads lowered, legs bent, or spears shown striking them, may have offered lessons for young hunters. A painted wall could serve as a classroom, where elders explained the behavior of bison or the danger of rhinos. Others may have shown tracking signs, teaching how to read footprint and pattern. In this way, cave art was never just artistic expression, but practical knowledge encoded in image. Teaching through picture gave hunters and gatherers a way to pass skill down across generations. Standing in a painted cave, you can almost hear voices echoing as someone explained, "This is how they move, this is how they fall." Stone Age walls may have been the first blackboards. Some paintings show human-animal hybrids. Among the most mysterious images of the Stone Age are figures that seem half human, half animal. Cave paintings and carvings show beings with human bodies, but the heads or features of lion, bird, or deer. These hybrid forms may portray shamans in trance, imagining themselves merging with animal spirits. They could also reflect myths or rituals now lost, where humans blurred the line between themselves and the wild creatures they depended on. The famous Lion Man figurine from Germany, carved more than 30,000 years ago, shows a human with the head of a great cat. Such figures suggest a world where imagination knew no limit, where people saw themselves not as separate from nature, but deeply entangled with it. These hybrids may have been the first gods, spirits, or heroes, born in the minds of people who dreamed of transformation and connection with the living world. People imagined mythical creatures tens of thousands of years ago, long before dragon, griffin, or unicorn appeared in written myth. Stone Age people were already imagining beings that never existed. Human-animal hybrids, fantastical carvings, and symbolic figures show imagination reaching beyond the real. Some images may show dream, vision, or ritual trance, given form in pigment and stone. Creating mythical beings marks the birth of abstract thought, the ability to picture something that does not exist and share it with others. These creatures may have been protectors, teachers, or symbols of power, carrying meaning we can only guess at today. They prove creativity and invention are not recent traits, but fundamental to humanity. To imagine a creature of spirit and flesh, half real and half imagined, is to step into the very beginnings of myth, proof that the roots of fantasy stretch back tens of thousands of years. Ritual masks were carved from stone. At some Stone Age sites, archaeologists have uncovered masks carved from stone, with hollowed eyes and stylized features. These masks are among the earliest evidence of ritual performance. Worn during ceremony, they may have turned the wearer into an ancestor, an animal spirit, or a supernatural being. Masks served as bridges between the human and the spiritual, letting participants step outside themselves. Making one demanded both skill and imagination, shaping stone into a face that could inspire awe or fear. Masks may have featured in dance, funeral, or rite of passage, firelight making their features flicker and shift. To wear a mask was to take on another identity, to move in both the world of people and the world of spirits. These ancient masks remind us that ritual performance and transformation have belonged to human culture since its earliest days. Shamanic figures appear in prehistoric art. Among the many animal images in Stone Age caves, some show figures that appear shamanic, human forms dressed in animal skin, antler, or feather. These figures may represent spiritual leaders, healers, or mediators between the living and the unseen. In societies without writing, shamans carried knowledge of plant, healing, and ritual, guiding communities through birth, death, and uncertainty. The art shows these roles were never hidden, but celebrated, placed alongside mammoth and lion as vital parts of existence. Some depictions show dance or altered states, suggesting trance rituals where shamans imagined crossing into other realms. These figures hint at the earliest roots of religion and spirituality, the idea that some people could travel beyond the ordinary and return with wisdom. In their painted forms, we see humanity's first attempts to capture the sacred roles within their communities. Ancient people may have used music in ritual. Music, like art, seems inseparable from the human spirit, and its roots reach deep into the Stone Age. Bone flutes, drums made from stretched hide, and rattles of shell or seed may have featured in ritual gathering. Music could unify a group, turning scattered individuals into a community that moved, clapped, or sang together. In ritual, sound could guide trance states, echo through caves, or call upon unseen powers. Imagine firelit ceremonies where voices rose in rhythm, echoing off stone walls as carved animals watched in silence. Music needed no written notes to carry meaning. It could express joy, fear, longing, or reverence in ways words never could. The presence of instruments, alongside ritual sites, suggests music was woven into ceremony from the very beginning. To make music in the Stone Age was to connect with each other, with nature, and perhaps with the divine. Flute songs may have echoed in painted caves. Some of the earliest flutes found were carved from bird bone more than 30,000 years ago. These delicate instruments carry carefully drilled holes, letting players produce several notes. In the hands of Stone Age musicians, they could weave haunting melody. Imagine standing in a dark cave, fire flickering against painted walls, as the sound of flutes fills the air. The cave itself would have worked as an amplifier, echoing notes through chamber and passage. Music, combined with art and ritual, must have created powerful, unforgettable moments. These songs were never recorded, but the instruments stay silent until played again by modern hands. When researchers reproduce them, the sound is eerie and beautiful, a reminder that the impulse to make music has always lived within us. Long before orchestra or choir, the first flute songs rose in painted caves, carried into eternity by stone and bone. Children may have learned by watching toolmakers. In the Stone Age, there were no schools or textbooks. Children learned by watching, listening, and imitating. Archaeological sites reveal piles of poorly made stone flakes beside expert tools, suggesting children practiced napping under the guidance of elders. These mistakes are priceless clues, showing how skill passed down. Children may have gathered close while parents shaped blades, learning the angle, the strike, the feel of stone splitting in the hand. They learned to sew by watching hide stitched, to hunt by trailing older hunters, to gather by exploring alongside family. Learning was immersive, woven into daily life. This process ensured knowledge never died with one generation, but flowed continuously across time. Every child's clumsy first flake was part of a tradition stretching back millennia, a quiet apprenticeship shaping survival and innovation in the ancient world. Skills were passed down across generations. The Stone Age was an era of continuity, where skill was preserved not by writing but by practice and teaching. Tool-making traditions lasted tens of thousands of years, passed hand to hand across generations. A particular style of blade or spear point could define a culture, spreading as people taught and learned. The persistence of these traditions shows the strength of oral knowledge, memory, and demonstration. Around every hearth circle, children absorbed skill from parent and grandparent, ensuring survival. Some techniques, like the Levallois method of shaping flakes, demanded remarkable precision and planning. Yet they were preserved across centuries. This continuity speaks to human patience and shared effort. In a world without books, people themselves were the libraries, carrying knowledge in hand and mind. Skill lived on in muscle memory, preserved in each strike of stone and each stitch of hide. Stone tool styles can identify entire cultures. Archaeologists can often recognize entire cultures by the style of their stone tools. Distinct shape, technique, and preference mark groups across time and space. A hand axe from Africa, a microlith from Europe, or an obsidian blade from the Near East speaks of the people who made it. These styles were never random, but taught, repeated, and perfected, becoming cultural signatures. The presence of a particular tool style in a new region often reveals migration, trade, or contact between groups. The Clovis points of North America, for instance, are instantly recognizable, spreading across the continent in just a few centuries. Tools carried identity as much as utility, reflecting choices passed down across generations. To hold a stone blade is to glimpse not only an individual craftsman, but an entire culture's tradition, carried in shape, skill, and memory through the ages. Distinct traditions spread across continents. The Stone Age was never a uniform period. Different regions built their own tool traditions, art styles, and survival strategies. These traditions spread across vast areas, carried by migration, trade, or imitation. A flint knapping method from one valley could turn up hundreds of miles away, evidence of ideas traveling with people. This shows that even without writing, humans shared knowledge widely. Some traditions endured for millennia unchanged, while others evolved quickly as groups adapted to new environments. The spread of tradition also reveals networks of contact, paths where story, tool, and innovation flowed. Far from isolated, Stone Age cultures were connected, trading ideas across mountain, river, and desert. Distinct traditions remind us that diversity and exchange have always belonged to humanity's story, shaping not only survival, but the rich variety of expression that defines us as a species. The Levallois technique produced predictable flakes. One of the most sophisticated stoneworking methods of the Stone Age was the Levallois technique. Instead of striking stone at random, toolmakers prepared a core with careful shaping, then struck it to remove a flake of a predetermined size and shape. This demanded foresight, planning, and precise control. The result was flakes sharper, longer, and more uniform than those made by simpler methods. The technique was used by Neanderthals as well as early modern humans, showing advanced intelligence across species. Mastering Levallois knapping transformed toolkits, allowing more effective hunting and food processing. It also reflects a leap in abstract thought, the ability to picture a desired outcome and work backward to reach it. Watching such a toolmaker at work would have felt like seeing an artist or engineer in motion, turning rough stone into finely crafted instruments of survival. Microliths became the building blocks of composite tools. As the Stone Age advanced, people began making microliths, tiny, razor-sharp blades only a few centimeters long. Alone, they were too small for heavy tasks, but combined, they proved revolutionary. Microliths could be set into wooden shafts with resin and sinew, creating arrows, spears, or cutting tools with replaceable edges. This modular approach meant broken parts could be swapped easily, and weapons could be tailored to different uses. Microliths also allowed lighter, more efficient hunting gear, reshaping how people pursued game. The innovation reflects not only skill, but systems thinking, seeing how small pieces could form a greater whole. Composite tools built from microliths spread widely, appearing in cultures across Europe, Africa, and Asia. These tiny shards of stone carried enormous power, marking a step toward the complex technologies that would one day define human ingenuity. Stone blades could grow longer than a human hand. Not every Stone Age blade was small. Some blades made in the Upper Paleolithic were astonishingly long, more than 20 centimeters, longer than a human hand. Making such blades required skillful preparation of large flint cores and precise control of striking angle. These long blades could serve directly as knives, or be reshaped into smaller tools, offering great efficiency. Their size also made them symbols of craftsmanship, showing off the maker's skill. To produce such a blade was to show mastery over material and technique, pushing stone to its limit. Holding one feels almost modern in its sharpness and elegance, challenging our assumptions about primitive technology. These long blades remind us that the Stone Age was never crude or clumsy, but filled with artisans who could coax extraordinary precision and beauty from stone, crafting tools that rival the sharpness of steel knives thousands of years before metalwork. Obsidian blades can be sharper than modern steel. Among the most extraordinary tools of the Stone Age were obsidian blades. Obsidian, volcanic glass, fractures at the molecular level, producing edges so sharp they can rival or even surpass modern surgical steel. Some studies show obsidian blades cutting with edges only a few molecules thick, far sharper than any metal knife. For Stone Age people, obsidian was a prized resource, traded across vast distances. To hold an obsidian blade was to hold one of the finest tools in the world. These blades could slice hide, meat, and plant fiber with ease, transforming survival tasks. Obsidian's sharpness also carried symbolic weight, its glossy black surface gleaming like polished gem. Even today, some surgeons use obsidian scalpels for microsurgery, linking modern medicine to Stone Age ingenuity. These blades prove the genius of tool-making reached extraordinary heights long before the arrival of bronze or iron. Some stone tools were polished to a mirror-like finish. While many stone tools were flaked and sharp-edged, others were ground and polished until they gleamed like mirrors. Polished stone axes found in the later Neolithic were smoothed through hours of grinding against abrasive surfaces. This labor produced tools not only stronger and sharper, but strikingly beautiful. Their surfaces caught light, shining as though made from crystal. Such tools served real purposes, cutting trees or shaping wood. But many were also buried in graves, or offered in ritual, suggesting symbolic weight. The care invested in polishing shows these tools were more than practical objects. They were expressions of identity, prestige, or spirituality. Making one demanded patience and vision, turning rough stone into something sleek and shining. These mirror-like axes remind us that even in the Stone Age, beauty and utility were intertwined in human craftsmanship. Grinding stones transformed plant foods. Before farming, people already experimented with grinding plant food using heavy stones. Grinding stones found at archaeological sites carry the smooth, worn surfaces of repeated use, where seed, nut, and root were crushed into flour or paste. This innovation transformed diet, making tough grain digestible and unlocking new sources of nutrition. Ground seed could be cooked into porridge or flatbread, precursors to agriculture's later staples. The labor was intense, hours of grinding for modest yield, but it let communities survive lean seasons and expand their food sources beyond hunting. The worn hollows of grinding stones, polished by countless repetitions, stand as silent testament to patience and persistence. They mark the first steps toward agriculture, where plants were no longer just gathered, but processed with care. These stones show that long before fields were sown, the foundations of farming were already being laid in grinding rhythm. People experimented with plant domestication before farming began. Long before organized agriculture, Stone Age people were already experimenting with plants. Archaeological evidence shows wild cereals and legumes were selectively gathered, replanted, and even encouraged to grow in favorable patches. Some groups learned that seeds dropped near camp sprouted again, inspiring the idea of cultivation. These experiments blurred the line between foraging and farming, setting the stage for agriculture. They reveal curiosity and observation, noticing which plants grew best, which seasons brought abundance, and how soil and water shaped success. Over generations, these small acts of tending became deliberate efforts, leading to the domestication of wheat, barley, and lentil. This experimentation never arrived suddenly, but gradually, 1,000 small discoveries woven into daily life. Farming did not begin with a single field. It began with countless moments of attention, as people realized they could shape nature just as surely as they shaped stone. Wild cereals were gathered for thousands of years. Before farming, wild cereals like einkorn, barley, and millet were staples for foragers across the ancient Near East and beyond. Grinding stones dating back more than 20,000 years bear traces of these plants, proving people harvested them long before cultivation began. Gathering wild cereal was hard work, bending, cutting, threshing, and grinding with simple tools. But the reward was rich. Grain could be stored, cooked, and carried, giving energy long after a hunt ended. Some of the earliest bread may have been baked from such grain, cooked as flat cakes on hot stone. This long tradition shows agriculture never suddenly appeared, but grew from deep experience. People knew the cycles of plants, the best places to find them, and the patience needed to process them. The fields of the first farmers were born from thousands of years of gathering wild grass beneath the open sky. Goats and sheep were among the first animals herded. When farming took root, animals mattered as much as plants. Goats and sheep ranked among the first species domesticated, their herding beginning more than 10,000 years ago. Both suited human needs perfectly. Hardy, adaptable, and providers of milk, meat, hide, and wool. Archaeological sites show pens and corrals where wild herds were gradually brought under control. Over generations, people selected animals calmer and easier to manage, slowly shaping them into domesticated breeds. Herding transformed human life, offering reliable food and material, and tying communities more firmly to the land. To keep goats and sheep was to claim security, a steady source of sustenance freeing people from the uncertainty of pure hunting. These early herds were living tools, carried from valley to valley, following people wherever they went, the first companions in humanity's long partnership with animals. Cattle domestication began in the Neolithic. Domesticating cattle marked another milestone of the Neolithic. Descended from massive wild aurochs, early cattle were powerful animals valued for meat, milk, hide, and eventually their strength as draft animals. Domestication began more than 8,000 years ago in the Near East, where people learned to manage herds, breed selectively, and guard them from predators. The shift to cattle herding proved transformative. Herds became mobile wealth, sources of food that could walk alongside communities as they migrated or settled. Cattle also carried symbolic weight, appearing in ritual and burial, their strength and size inspiring reverence. Taming such a large animal was a remarkable achievement, a blend of patience, risk, and ingenuity. These herds widened the possibilities of survival, fueling population growth and settlement. The story of cattle domestication is the story of humanity's deepening relationship with nature, turning wild strength into trusted partnership. Permanent villages emerged with farming. As farming spread, people no longer needed to follow herds or seasonal migration. For the first time in history, permanent villages appeared. These settlements, some dating back over 10,000 years, held clusters of houses built from stone, mud, or timber. Archaeologists have uncovered villages with courtyard, storage pit, and communal space, revealing new rhythms of life. Farming let larger populations gather, and permanence encouraged new crafts, pottery, weaving, tool specialization. Villages also became centers of culture, where tradition deepened and identity strengthened. But permanence brought challenges too: disputes over land, the spread of disease, and the need for cooperation. Yet the advantages outweighed the risk, and the village became humanity's new home. These settlements were the seeds of town, city, and civilization, rooted in soil tilled by Stone Age farmers. The first villages were small, but their legacy shaped the entire future of humanity. Mud brick houses appeared in the Stone Age. Among the earliest permanent dwellings were mud brick houses, built by mixing clay, straw, and water into bricks dried hard in the sun. These structures, some more than 9,000 years old, have turned up in ancient villages across the Near East. Mud brick houses were durable, yet simple to build, their walls insulating against both heat and cold. Floors were sometimes plastered, and hearths installed for cooking. Roofs of timber and reed gave extra space for storage or even sleeping. These houses marked a profound shift, not temporary shelter of hide or bone, but stable homes meant to last years, even decades. To build with mud brick was to declare permanence, to root oneself in a place and invest in its future. Standing among the ruins of these ancient houses, one can still trace the outline of humanity's first true neighborhoods, built of earth and ambition. The first plastered floors date back to ancient Jericho. In the ancient settlement of Jericho, archaeologists uncovered houses with floors coated in thick plaster, among the earliest known in the world. These smooth, gleaming surfaces were made from lime plaster, created by heating limestone to incredible temperatures and mixing it with water. Making such plaster demanded real effort, fire, labor, and planning. Yet the result was striking: clean, durable floors that could be repaired and resurfaced as needed. These floors were never just functional, but symbolic too, representing care and investment in home. Some even carried traces of pigment, suggesting they were decorated or colored. Plastered floors at Jericho reveal how far Stone Age people had come, from living in cave or hut to crafting engineered environments, turning houses into true living spaces, durable and orderly. Proof of communities growing more sophisticated and rooted with every generation. Some villages had defensive walls long before cities existed. Jericho holds another surprise: massive stone walls built around the village more than 9,000 years ago. These rank among the earliest defensive structures in human history, long before true cities ever rose. The walls, several meters high, were built of stone and mud brick, possibly to guard against flood or raiding groups. A stone tower attached to the wall hints at surveillance or ceremonial use. These defenses show Stone Age communities were already thinking collectively, planning large-scale projects that demanded cooperation and leadership. They also reveal that danger was real, whether from rival group, wild animal, or natural force. Building such walls marks a turning point, where communities began protecting not just people, but field, herd, and food store as well. These early fortifications foreshadowed the great walled cities of later civilizations, but their roots lie in Stone Age ingenuity and caution. The earliest pottery came before metalwork. Pottery is one of humanity's most enduring technologies, its origins stretching back to the Stone Age, long before the use of metal. The earliest pots date to more than 16,000 years ago in East Asia, where people shaped clay vessels and hardened them in fire. These simple but revolutionary containers transformed daily life. They let water be stored, food cooked more efficiently, and grain preserved. Unlike baskets or skins, pottery was durable, able to last years if handled with care. Decorating pots with patterns soon followed, turning utility into art. Pottery also carried social meaning, with design reflecting identity or tradition. Its invention marks a profound step, enabling the storage and cooking that supported larger communities. Long before bronze or iron, it was clay that reshaped human life. Humble earth transformed into vessels of survival and culture. Fired clay was used for storage jars and cooking pots. Once people learned to harden clay in fire, they began crafting jar, bowl, and cooking pot. These vessels were thicker and sturdier than early pottery, able to store large amounts of grain or liquid. Cooking pots let food be boiled, softening tough root and grain, widening diets and improving nutrition. Storage jars made it possible to keep surplus food for future seasons, guarding communities against famine. Some jars grew so large they stayed put, becoming central features of houses or shared spaces. The durability of fired clay also made it perfect for carrying tradition forward. Fragments of decorated pottery survive, even when wood or hide has long vanished. Each shard tells a story of meals cooked, food preserved, and families nourished. Fired clay was never just a material. It was a revolution, giving human communities greater control over time, hunger, and survival. People decorated pottery with pattern and paint. Even the earliest pottery was rarely plain. People scratched lines, pressed chord patterns, or painted designs onto their vessels. These decorations turned pots into objects of identity and pride. Patterns might have signified ownership, community, or symbolic meaning, while painted motifs often reflected nature, animal, plant, or abstract design. Some pots bear repeating geometric shapes, possibly tied to ritual or cosmology. Decorating pottery meant more than aesthetics. It turned vessels into carriers of culture. Each design reflected the hand of its maker and the tradition of a group, letting archaeologists today trace styles across region and century. Pottery, then, was both practical and expressive, a way to hold food and idea at the same time. The act of decorating shows beauty mattered as much as survival, proof that even the simplest vessel could hold both nourishment and meaning. Clay figurines were sometimes deliberately broken. Among the most mysterious Stone Age artifacts are clay figurines, small human or animal shapes, often fired in hearths. Many show signs of deliberate breaking, sometimes right after being made. This has led archaeologists to believe they played a role in ritual, perhaps offerings meant to be created and destroyed as symbolic acts. Some may have represented fertility, ancestor, or spirit, their breaking part of ceremony tied to renewal or protection. The act of destruction carried meaning just as much as creation. Figurines also show early experimentation with clay, laying the foundation for pottery. Their fragile remains, scattered in ancient settlements, are haunting glimpses of rituals we cannot fully understand. To shape a figure from earth, then break it in firelight, was to engage in symbolic dialogue with the world, an early expression of belief and imagination. Early farmers built megalithic tombs. As farming spread, communities began raising monumental tombs from massive stones known as megaliths. These structures, dating back more than 6,000 years, were feats of engineering, demanding the movement of multi-ton slabs without wheel or metal tool. Megalithic tombs served as burial chambers for entire communities, marking places of memory and identity. They were often covered with earth to form mounds, blending architecture with landscape. Building such tombs reflects a strong sense of ancestry and continuity, a wish to honor the dead and anchor the living to the land. Some tombs stayed in use for centuries, receiving generation after generation of burial. Standing before these monuments, one feels the weight of collective effort and devotion. They remind us that even in the Stone Age, people built not only for survival, but for remembrance, raising structures meant to outlast lifetimes. Passage graves were oriented toward the sun. Many megalithic tombs were built with astonishing precision, their passageways aligned to the rising or setting sun at solstice or equinox. At Newgrange in Ireland, for example, light pierces the narrow passage on the winter solstice, flooding the inner chamber with light. This alignment shows deep astronomical knowledge and symbolic intent, tying death to the cycles of the sun. Such precision demanded years of observation and careful planning. These alignments may have symbolized rebirth, renewal, or the bond between ancestor and cosmic order. To stand inside a tomb, as the sun rises and lights stone carvings, is to witness a fusion of architecture, ritual, and astronomy. These monuments prove Stone Age people were not only builders, but astronomers, weaving the heavens into their very graves. The passage of light through stone remains among the most awe-inspiring legacies of prehistoric imagination. Stone circles may have aligned with the solstices. Beyond tombs, people also raised great circles of standing stone, some aligned with solstice or other celestial event. Stonehenge in England is the most famous, but stone circles exist across Europe and beyond. These rings may have served as ritual space, calendar, or gathering place, where communities came together to mark the rhythm of the year. Aligning massive stones with astronomical events demanded knowledge, patience, and collective effort. The stones themselves became markers of time, guiding planting, harvest, or ritual. To gather in a circle of towering stone as the sun rose or set at a precise point must have been deeply moving. These monuments show how deeply the cycles of the heavens were woven into human life. Long before written calendars, stone circles anchored time itself in the earth, creating sacred landscapes where sky and stone met. Menhirs were raised as standing monuments. Scattered across Europe, Africa, and Asia are menhirs, single standing stones erected by Stone Age people. Some stand alone, others in rows or clusters towering above the land. Quarrying, moving, and raising these stones took immense effort. Yet their purpose stays mysterious. They may have marked territory, honored ancestors, or served as ritual markers aligned with sun or star. Some carry carved symbols, while others stand plain and silent, their meaning lost to time. What is clear is their power. To walk among them is to feel the presence of intention, of human will etched into stone. Menhirs stand among the earliest large-scale monuments, turning the landscape into a canvas of memory and meaning. Their lasting presence shows Stone Age people sought permanence, raising markers that still stand millennia later, long after their builders vanished. Ancient roads connected villages and monuments. Archaeologists have found traces of ancient pathways linking village, tomb, and ritual site. These early roads, often marked by ditch or stone alignment, show movement and connection sat central to Stone Age life. People traveled between settlements carrying goods, stories, and tradition. Roads also served symbolic purposes, guiding processions during ritual or linking the living with the spaces of the dead. Some alignments stretch for miles, their straightness suggesting deliberate planning rather than chance trails. These paths remind us that Stone Age life was never isolated, but interconnected, communities bound by shared space and journey. To walk an ancient road is to step where countless feet once passed, carrying burden, offering, or memory. These silent lines in the earth rank among the earliest expressions of infrastructure, proof that people sought not only to survive, but to link their worlds together. Trade networks stretched across continents. The Stone Age world was vast, yet people connected across incredible distances. Obsidian from Anatolia turns up at sites hundreds of miles away. Shells from distant coasts appear deep inland. Amber, flint, and pigment traveled in hand and pack across mountain and plain. These objects prove that long before caravan or imperial ship, trade networks already spanned continents. Exchange was never only about survival goods, but about beauty, rarity, and meaning. Carrying an object from afar was to carry a story, a link to other communities. Trade forged bonds of trust and shared culture, weaving together a scattered humanity. These networks reveal that Stone Age people were not isolated, but cosmopolitan in their own way, part of webs of exchange stretching far beyond their horizon. Each traded bead or blade proved that curiosity and connection have always sat central to our species. Stone Age innovation laid the foundations for civilization. The Stone Age was never a time of stagnation, but of constant innovation. Fire, clothing, shelter, tool, art, and agriculture all emerged across these long millennia. Each invention laid groundwork for the civilizations that followed. The ability to store food, track time, build monuments, and gather communities were all first steps toward town, writing, and state. The Stone Age was humanity's laboratory, where trial and error shaped the foundations of everything to come. Without its ingenuity, there would be no city, no temple, no history as we know it. These innovations remind us that progress builds on itself. Each spark, each flake of stone, each seed planted pushed humanity forward. Far from primitive, the Stone Age was the age when everything began, when people carved the first steps on a path that still stretches into our future. The Age of Stone ended, but its inventions live on. The Stone Age eventually gave way to the Age of Metal, when bronze and iron transformed tool and weapon. But the inventions of the Stone Age never truly vanished. Fire still warms our homes. Clothing still shields us. Storytelling still binds us together. We still build, farm, trade, and decorate, following patterns set long ago. Even today, archaeologists uncover stone tools, sharp, efficient, and elegant, reminders of their enduring brilliance. The end of the Stone Age was never an end, but a transformation. Its discoveries carried forward into every chapter of history. The echoes of that age live in our daily lives, proof its people were not so different from us. They too imagined, created, and dreamed, leaving behind inventions that remain part of what it means to be human. The Stone Age never truly ended. It lives on within us. And so our journey through the Stone Age comes to a quiet close. We have walked beside the first toolmakers who struck sparks from stone and lit fires in the dark. We have seen caves painted with the shapes of mammoth and lion, echoes of a world both beautiful and perilous. We have listened for the sound of flutes carved from bone, their notes drifting into the chambers of painted caverns. We have watched villages rise, harvests take root, and monuments of stone lift toward the sky. The Stone Age was not only about survival, it was about imagination. The first beads strung on cord, the first songs played, the first seeds planted, each a beginning, each a spark that carried humanity forward. The people of that age may seem distant, but their hands shaped the world we still live in. The tools they invented, the stories they told, and the paths they carved became the foundations of everything that followed. As we leave this ancient world, let us remember the patience of those who ground seed on stone, the courage of those who crossed seas in fragile boats, and the wonder of those who looked at the stars and imagined patterns in their endless sweep. Their lives remind us that humanity's strength lies not only in survival, but in curiosity, creativity, and connection. If you have stayed with me this far, perhaps your eyes are already heavy, your breathing slower, your thoughts drifting like embers fading into ash. Let the weight of the day slip away as softly as footprints disappearing into ancient soil. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like and subscribe, or simply share a thought in the comments below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing more to do, and nowhere else you need to be. Rest easy. Let your mind wander through painted caves and starlit fields, and allow yourself to drift into sleep, carried by the quiet echoes of the Stone Age. Let's end our journey here. Good night.